Thank y'all for being here. Next Sunday, we're singing Break Your Chain, Break Every Chain, not your chain. Break every chain. Please don't anybody break your chain.
Let's bring it in at the end. Oh, you're good now. Gotcha. My car's right next to you.
Black and white. I know. But if I listen to
Okay, I'll just bring it in here.
If that's okay, if y'all are good with that, then that's fine. If you want to bring it in here, just drop it by the back row back there. Sure. And I'll get it to you.
No problem.
taking this.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
We're going to do some stuff. As far as what that is,
I'm putting it back.
that's the way you can do it.
Okay. Thank you.
All the old babies.
We're
Where's everybody at? As my mom says, well, I'm here, right? You guys are here, that's good. Who's supposed to be on vacation? You are? They must be. I thought you said you must be. I'm like, well, why aren't you on vacation? I wouldn't have come here if I was on vacation. But I'm not, so I'm here, all right? I trust you've had a good week. Everybody had a good holiday weekend last weekend. Enjoyed the weekend, and we've got another one coming up in what, a month, right? Less than a month now. Yeah, wow. Time is flying. Do you realize that? Here we are almost halfway through this year of 2021. Some of you young people don't know what I mean, but they always say the days go by slow and the years go by so fast. And they do. I mean, I remember, I thought I would die before I reached age 16. I remember sitting out at Mom and Dad's Grand Prix, 1971 Grand Prix, sitting in that steering wheel, behind that steering wheel thinking I could drive. I thought I never will make it to 16. I will die before I get my driver's license. And now it's been 46 years. Boom, like that. Time waits on nobody. Who learned something last time we were here? Do you remember what we talked about? It was 2 weeks ago. Anybody remember what we talked about? Budget. Good. So who learned something last week, or 2 weeks ago? If I keep saying last week, it was 2 weeks ago. Right? If you learned something last week, praise the Lord, it wasn't me. Yeah. Who learned something about their budget? Yeah. What's that? The lack thereof. Yeah, and that's with most people. Most people, quite honestly, do not have a plan. All right? I was just talking to your pastor. He went out to Yellowstone over the last week or so, and he said they went without a plan, without an agenda. Man, that's the way to go, except when you're trying to manage your money, right? No details, no nothing, just go on a whim. But guess what? It gets most of us in trouble a lot of times. So specifically, did everybody do their budget for the month of June? All right? Anybody who did and the dog ate your homework? All right? That was me back when I was in grade school. I didn't even have a dog, but the dog ate my homework. Anybody attempt it and have struggle with it? Because I want to start tonight off with kind of picking up there, because quite frankly, that is the hub when it comes to managing our finances. We have to have a plan. Most of us in today's world would not start off on a road trip without some sort of mechanism that's going to guide us along. Some of us are in here old enough to remember the AAA triptychs, right? Others, I see some heads nodding, yeah. Others today, we've become used to Waze and Apple Maps and Google Maps and Yahoo Maps and all those maps that are on our phone. But the reality is, sometimes we'll try to do that. I don't know about you, but I can never ride in a car. I shouldn't say never. I don't like to ride in a car when my wife's driving, because I don't know where we're going to wind up at. I really don't. And I love my wife, but she's directionally challenged, if you know what I mean. But the point, I hope she doesn't watch these things. I'm just being honest with you. The truth is, we need to have a plan in front of us. How many of you worked on your plan and are living by your plan now, day 6 into this month? You are. So what'd you find out? A lot of what? Oh, yeah. So where's the money been going? Let me, out to eat primarily? Yeah. Yeah. House projects. Not necessarily a bad thing with the house projects as compared to, as he put that, all right? And that's not bad either, but we got to do it within reason, right? I had a guy come in my office, a husband and wife, many, many years ago, and he wanted me to help him work on this specific thing with his budget, because he didn't really want to live within the budget. He just wanted to have a budget, but then do what he wanted to do. And literally this couple and their 2 young children were spending over $800 a month going out to eat. One time he came in and he told me, he said, you know, my wife and I have these great ideas of what we're going to do, and we're going to generate millions of dollars off of these ideas. And he started telling me what they were, and I said, no, I don't want to know your ideas. I said, I'm sure they'll work, but I don't want somebody to steal your ideas and you come back to me thinking I have done something. You deal with these. But let me ask you this one question. What are you going to do about seed money for these ideas? How are you going to get this started to be able to do what you're wanting to do? And he said specifically, I believe God will provide. I said, well, I can't argue with you. I really can't argue with you, because I've seen him provide in so many different ways in so many different lives around clients, family, and more specifically with me. I cannot tell you that I disagree with you there. But the question I would ask you is, what if he tells you that he did and you ate it? His wife never came back. He came back a couple of more times and they tried to get things straight, and I think they were last time I talked to him, moving things in the right direction. The point is we've got to have a plan. Who has a question about their budget that they did for the month of June? Anything that you're struggling with? All right? So for those of you, let's just be honest, I know that one couple did theirs. Anybody else did not do theirs? One, being honest, all right? What kept us from it? Well, and it's something to learn. It's not going to be perfect the first month. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be perfect. Listen, I've been doing this stuff for 18 years, and I've yet to have a perfect month. It just doesn't happen, right? You want to strive towards that. You want to work towards that, but it doesn't work. Life happens all around it to where you've got to adjust your plan. You've got to kind of have your sea legs in there to be able to ride the waves of life, to be able to do that.
Okay, on a credit card where you had to put something for the house that wasn't planned for on there, and you're paying it a year later, how much do you, I mean, I don't know how much to put toward it, like, you have to have a certain amount to put toward it, but you can't go over it.
Right, right. And I would tell you need to put as much on that as you can, okay? And you're kind of segueing into what we're talking about here tonight, all right? So if you can hang on to that, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight and in 3 weeks. But I'll start off with handing a piece of paper out here tonight in just a minute. Somebody else who struggled with theirs with a specific thing that you're willing to talk about. I don't want to get anything personal that you're sharing with anybody else, but anything you struggled with. Okay, for those of you that did not do it, how many of you will tonight? Honestly, remember, we're sitting in the church building, all right? We'll commit to, all right? Say, I'm going to work on my budget tonight, tomorrow, and have that in place this week. Because you've still got 3 weeks. You'll do it? You'll do it? All right? I do, as a matter of fact. You guys are just leading into everything that I want to talk about. I do have a few of these. Anybody need one? I think I've got about 10. And to her point, they're on my website if you can get to them. So let me know afterwards what kind of problem. Could be. Could be. I'm not for sure. I'm not for sure exactly what I've got that saved in, whether it's a doc or a PDF. I think there might be a couple there. Anybody else with one of these? Okay, and what she's referring to is you can go to my website, www.myfinancialfocus.net, click on the resources page, go down, it'll say budget, you can click on that, and download and save to your computer. Hopefully it works right. Let me know if it doesn't. At my website, you can send me an email. I think somebody sent me an email last time as well. But you'll be able to get that, save it on your computer, print it, go back every month or whatever. Here's the other thing. You're getting ready to work on your budget tonight for the month of June. We are now 6 days into the month of June. So what should you be doing now? Not a problem with that, but specifically with your June budget. What should you be doing now? Putting in actuals. Tracking and making sure that you're on the right path of where you're at. I won't waste the time pulling up my phone, but if you pull up your phone, and if you're a smart person, you've got a smartphone that's known as an iPhone, right? None of this Android stuff, right? You guys aren't Android people, right? Oh my, I'm an Apple guy. Anyways, seriously, they've all got that little blue dot, right? And that little blue dot is showing you where you're at. And you plug in, you say, well, I want to go here. From here, it's going to show you how to get there, but that little blue dot, when you're on the right path, is going to follow where you're at. Right? Big Brother's tracking us. Well, not Big Brother, but that satellite's tracking us, and it's showing exactly where we're at down to that phone. When you're putting in your actuals on your budget, it's showing you where you're at, what you need to adjust to. And not making fun, but you said, hey, we've been putting a lot of money in out to eat. Maybe we're not doing what we should be right now, and we see that starting to inch up to where that max is for the month. We got to stop and make sure that we're focusing on other things to do with the cash that we've got coming in, because we have a balanced budget, right? Which means this is all the income that we have. We want to do it. Back to your question, we've got a debt that we're paying for. How much do I want to put to it? As much as I can when we get to the right spot. Any other questions? One of the things that I want to show you, if this will work, I'm not carrying this with me, am I? If this worked. Yep, there it is. The 7 steps. You all are familiar with the 7 steps of managing money. Some of you raised your hand and said you knew who Dave Ramsey was. Dave Ramsey has his 7 steps that you're supposed to follow. Truth is, they're not Dave Ramsey. He's put them together. He's just marketed them very well. It's common sense when you begin to look at it and how we should be managing ourselves and our money. But Dave's done a very good job in marketing this stuff. These are the 7 steps. They're the very same steps that you've heard Dave talk about. I've renamed them a little bit because I spent some time on TV and just didn't want the similarities there to be able to do that. These are the 7 steps that I walk people through. I have about 10 copies of these here. I just picked them up on my way out of the office. I didn't print a lot of them, didn't know how many. Anybody want one, need one? You can also get these on my website as well. At the resources page, it'll talk about those 7 steps. You can pull that down. Or actually, I think it says refrigerator slides. Because if you're anything like me, you put anything important on your refrigerator. And I've been told we spend most of our time at the refrigerator. Anybody else need one? All right. And I'll have some more up here as well. 2 or 3 left at the end. You'll see that very first step says what? Engage your emergency fund. We're going to be talking about that specifically tonight. How to build an emergency fund. Why to build an emergency fund? How do you do that? What's the purpose of it? How do you make that happen? Why it's important? All that good stuff of what we're talking about here tonight in this session. Then secondly, well, we've got our emergency fund at least $1,000. Second thing is to get into debt. Now, not get into debt, but to get into the debt and paying it off. To work to defeat our debt. Throw as much as we can at our debt in the debt snowball. We won't be meeting next week because you folks are starting Bible school. 2 weeks from now is Father's Day. We'll be back 3 weeks from tonight, okay? Because they want me to take those 2 Sunday nights off, be back 3 weeks from tonight. We're going to talk about that specific step. Defeating debt, dumping debt, working the debt snowball. We'll be doing that 3 weeks from tonight. Then we want to go in and enlarge our emergency fund. We're going to start out with that $1,000, at least $1,000 to get us to that particular point. When we get through the debt piece, we want to grow that emergency fund, which is at $1,000, maybe a little bit more. We want to grow that to one that's the equivalent of 3 to 6 months of our living expenses. What does it cost us each month to live? If it costs us $1,000 a month to live, then it's going to be somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 of where we want step number 3 to be to. Step number 4, when we're done with steps 1, 2, 3, step number 4 is to begin to invest for our future, invest in our retirement, initiate our investing, working our way up to where we're putting away at least 15% of our income away in tax-advantaged retirement investment account. Your 401k, a Roth IRA, traditional IRA, maybe a SEP if you have a small business. There's a lot of different vehicles that you can use. Maybe your company offers a Roth 401k. It's another new one that they've got out there as well. A lot of different things that you can use for step number 4, and then we begin to do that. While we're doing number 4, we can also do number 5. Number 5 is to put away money for our children's education. You'll notice I have an asterisk there, right? Because a lot of people do that, a lot of people don't do that. It's primarily what's up to you to be able to do that. That's the time to be doing it, when you're going to be doing it, and putting money away for your children's education. Honestly, we didn't put any money away for our children's education because we jumped to step number 6. And that's to minimize your mortgage. Pay as much as you can on top of your mortgage on a monthly basis to watch that thing go away. My theory in my mind was, hey, if I can get that mortgage paid off and my kids are going to school and the Hope Scholarship's giving them all they can because they've done what they should be to earn that and keep it, then whatever I need to pay, I can take care of because I don't have a house payment anymore. And it tended to work out, right? The point is we've got to apply ourselves and do it because we want to get to step number 7. Step number 7 is to live and to give freely. That's all money's good for, is to live, to provide for the necessities that we need in this life, and to be in a position to give to others who are less fortunate, who are struggling, who may need some help along the way. And believe me, those people truly in need are everywhere around us. All we have to do is open our eyes and look. I'm not looking for those people who don't want to go out and apply themselves, but people who are truly in need is what we should be doing. We're going to move on here to talk about saving for an emergency fund, but I will take you back to the year that we paid off the house. Paid off the house 2 days before my 45th birthday in September of 2007. This September would have been 14 years of no house payment. And I remember that Christmas thinking, my goodness, I'd like to do something like to do something to be a help to somebody because it's Christmas time. And I thought, well, what better to do but to go to Waffle House on Christmas, all right? And so we went to, or actually I mentioned it to my kids and my wife. My wife, the one time a year my wife really gets up and makes a big breakfast, big spread, is on Christmas morning. I said, well, you know, this year, how about we go to Waffle House? Well, it was a hit. Everybody's, oh yeah, let's go to Waffle House. And Waffle House wasn't a big thing that we went to on a regular basis, but let's go. And so it rolled around to be Christmas Eve, and I'd been working, and I came home from work, and we just wasn't feeling right. My wife and the kids were at somebody else's house, and I was just feeling down. I mean, physically down. So I turned on that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, because nobody ever wants to watch it with me, right? And so I turned that on, and I'm like, man, this is just getting worse. I'm going to take some Tylenol or something. I went and looked, took a flashlight, and I had big white pockets all over my throat. I had strep throat. It's 6:30, Christmas Eve. There's nowhere to go to get medication. Fortunately, we'd been on a mission trip just a couple of months earlier, and one of the guys had bought some pharmaceuticals in Mexico and brought those back, so I called him and got some amoxicillin to get me through the next couple of days. But Christmas morning rolled around, and I'm laying in bed, I'm like, Lord, please, I don't want to go to Waffle House. I don't want to go. But here come the kids. Let's go to Waffle House. Let's go to Waffle House. So we pile in. I got a leather coat on. It's zipped up, and I'm just freezing sitting in Waffle House. Today, you wouldn't be able to do it with COVID. They'd throw you out, right? Because you look sick. But I remember when we were done eating, we left a huge tip on that plate for that lady who waited on us. And I'm going to be honest with you. She didn't do a job to deserve it. She was frustrated. She was busy. She was slapping food, you know what they do at Waffle House. But I thought in my mind, you know, that lady's here working, not because she wanted to work on Christmas Day, but because they need to. They need the income to be able to do it. And I hope we were a huge blessing to her that day. And since then, I'll tell you, who's got the giving bag is my wife. My wife is a big giver. Whew, I can tell you some stories about that, especially around tipping. Getting into emergency fund. Step number one. How do you get into step number one? Why do you need to get into step number one? Here's the thing that I would tell you. Be prepared. I'm looking at some of these guys in here. You ever were any of you a Boy Scout? Boy Scout? How far did you go? Eagle. All right, good job. Anybody else? No? You were Eagle too? No. Ah, well. I was there too. I wasn't an Eagle. Far from it, right? I used to watch the Eagles. That's about it. But be prepared. That was always the theme, wasn't it? What's going to happen? Don't know. I believe my first and only Boy Scout camping adventure we went on, and I mean, I just didn't know these guys, and I didn't want to be out in the woods with them and this type of stuff. But one of the guys was cutting some wood or chopping some wood with an axe and slipped and cut his leg and blood everywhere. Be prepared. Those things happen, right? The guy who was in charge, he fixed him up, and he made it through the night, and they took him to the doctor the next day. Hope he still got his leg, but that's been many, many years ago. Most people are not prepared. Is there any, people have very short memories. I've learned that over the years. People have very short memories. Does anybody remember what happened about 15 months ago? COVID. Yeah. January that year, we were hearing about this virus, this stuff going on in China. I remember watching the video on the news of the Chinese building this hospital just for these SARS, whatever they call it, SARS-2, whatever it was, the SARS thing. They were building a hospital specifically for these people. They built it in like 2 weeks, this huge hospital. But it was over there, right? We were being told it's not going to do anything to us here. It's something over there. Then we get to March, and what happened? I think it was March 13th, if I'm not mistaken, 12th, 13th, right in that period of time right there. Anybody remember what happened? Shut it down, didn't they? I remember I was actually having a tooth pulled right here that day, a tooth pulled. And I remember the dentist who I've been going to for 20-some years at that point, he said, what is going on? What is going on with people? And to this day, now 15 months later, I can't tell you what was going on with people, but here's what I will tell you. Millions of people were affected and are still being affected by that. And about April, May, June of last year, I started getting phone calls and emails and texts from people saying, now I know what you mean by an emergency fund. Most people were not prepared for that situation because you know what? We didn't see that coming. Why be prepared for something when we don't see it coming, right? Here's what I'll tell you to be prepared. The average American family will go through a financial setback at least once every rolling 15-year period. What does that mean? You take a 15-year mark, and you can say that on average, statistically, most financial setbacks will occur one time in that 15-year period to each family. I said that one time in a class that I was doing. I saw a couple back there. And they told me afterwards, they said, yeah, we've had all of ours here in the last 5 years, so we're good for the rest of our lives. No, I don't think it works that way, right? But you know what? Even though we know that, even though we see that, statistically we know it happens, most people are still not prepared. As much as we went through over the last 15 months, people still don't get prepared for what's coming down the line. I can't tell you what's next. I don't know what's next. But I would venture to say it's probably going to be worse than what we've seen here in the recent past. That's just the way things work. The question to you, and specifically in your household, is are you saving adequately? Are you putting money away as you should, preparing for those things that are going to happen in the future? None of us know. None of us know. I've had people actually sit in my office, yeah, you know, we're fine, we'll be able, my job's secure, my job's good, and I'm like, uh-oh, watch out when you think that, because you are expendable. That company, that organization will go on without you like nothing ever happened, okay? Most people just don't prepare for those things, and when they happen, it's like, oh my goodness, where'd that come from? I've been there, done it. We used this verse, we talked about this verse 2 weeks ago, right, when we were talking about budgeting. Most of us aren't prepared, and we wonder why, when things happen, we just kind of fall apart. It's because we're not doing what we should be doing. Look at what you are doing. I love this verse, and I love that next verse in verse number 7 when he says, consider your ways. Time to do something different, to be prepared. You must have an emergency fund. And that tells you right there, what does most people's emergency fund consist of? Credit card. Credit card. We know that most people get their very first credit card. Used to be most people got their very first credit card when they went to college, right? But we also know statistically, people, when they honestly answer that question, say that they got that first credit card to prepare for an emergency. Yeah. And then we use that because we're going to pay it off, right? And then something else happens. Before you know it, because we're doing so good with our credit, we get another offer in the mail. Well, wait, you know, I've almost got this one maxed out. I better get another one in case we really have an emergency. Before you know it, you've got a pocket full. Talked to a couple recently who, between the two of them, 13 credit cards. That's within the last 48 hours, okay? 13 credit cards. And they're sitting over there adding, and I'm like, okay, no, wait a minute. You're adding these up. I said, they're together, right? And, well, no, these are mine and these are mine. That's 13. And I'm not sure they had the number right. Could be 14. I don't know, all right, because they were doing this kind of stuff, all right, to do that. What do you do with that many credit cards? You spend. And you spend out of control because we have no control with those. But you know what? We got it for an emergency. And when they're maxed out and the emergency happens, then what do we do? Get another one. Yeah. An emergency fund. An emergency fund is a category in our budget which is set aside for unprepared expenses, unplanned expenses. If you look on that budget that I gave you in the spending, it's the second one, the second category, the second line there, emergency savings. Money that we should be intentionally setting aside every month. So we build first that $1,000, then we get into step number 2, paying off our debt. Step number 3, we build up to 3 to 6 months of our emergency fund. So I'm going to go back to your question, talking about how much do I pay. I don't want you to get personal about how much you've got saved up. But until you've got $1,000 in your emergency fund, I would be making minimum payments on that credit card. I think you said it was for a home repair or something like that, make minimum payments. Once I get my $1,000, now I want to be throwing everything I can at that credit card. We'll talk more about that. My focus right now is that emergency fund. I want to build that up, pay everything as small as I can, not to go out to eat that much, not to be entertaining that much, control everything that I'm doing so I can throw as much as I can in that emergency fund. Because here's what I'm going to guarantee. You're going to have an unplanned circumstance sooner than what you think. It just happens. It happens to all of us. And for most of us, we're unprepared. Why? Because we can't see the future. We think everything's going to be fine. Everything's going real well. Everything's going real well. You're driving down the road, everything is smooth. You've been on vacation, this is great. And then all of a sudden, it's right up on you, a big pothole. Before you know it, you've damaged the rim and blown out the tire. Where are you going to get the money for that? What if somebody gets sick? What if somebody can't work? What if they get laid off? What if? What if? What if? Being prepared is key. Have an emergency fund. We want to start with that $1,000. Now, I say $1,000 because $1,000 is something that typically takes care of most emergencies, okay? It's not going to replace 3 months of income if you get laid off or get sick, break a leg, laid up in bed, something like that. It's not going to do that. But for most emergencies, it's going to take care of it, right? The muffler falls off the car. The washer breaks down. You know, so many things that can happen and often do happen, that $1,000 will take care of it. And the truth is, if we will work hard to put that $1,000 in that savings account away from ourselves and protect that, when things do happen, you start to think about, whoa, is this really an emergency? For instance, if your stove, the burner on your stove quits working, is that an emergency?
No.
Why not?
Because you got 4 more.
You got 4, 3 or 4 more, yeah, because some of them have 4, or have 5 with a center one. You've also got a gas grill. You got a microwave. You got an oven. You got all these things. They've even got Lunchables, right? You can live on Lunchables for a few days, right? For some ramen noodles, you know, whatever the case may be. Put some of that water out in the sunshine here in Georgia and heat that stuff up, put some ramen noodles in. We'll make it, right? Now, wait a minute. What if the washing machine breaks down on a single mom of about 3 kids? Yeah. Could be an emergency, right? For most of us, we've got enough clothes to make it for a few days. For that mom who's washing diapers, taking care of kids' clothes, that could be pretty devastating to do that. Set aside at least $1,000. On top of that, maybe your lifestyle, maybe your income is a little bit more than what normal people might have. In that case, I would say have $2,000, $2,500. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit more. The main thing we want to do here is we want to get something put away for an emergency because we want to get after that next step that we're going to be talking about in 3 weeks, paying off that debt. That's what keeps people hamstrung, that debt. How do we get that taken care of? Well, we've got to protect ourselves. We've got to have something put away because remember, we got that credit card for an emergency. So if we don't save something and we start attacking that debt aggressively, and then the tire does blow out, the stove does quit, the washing machine does quit, what are we going to do? Go right back into more debt because we don't have anything saved up to be able to take care of those emergencies when they come about. As we go on and as we get into step number 3, we want to grow that to that bigger amount, 3 to 6 months of our living expenses. Looking at your budget, what does it cost you a month to live? Well, some of us didn't do our budget, right? So we got to do our budget. We got to see what that looks like. It'll fluctuate over several months, but kind of get a general idea of what it costs us to live. And think about that. When we're putting that together and we're saying we got to have this much money on a monthly basis, if something really happened to where we lost our job, sick, injured, couldn't work, no income, there are areas in there that you could cut, right? Now, I don't know how, and I mentioned this in my Sunday school class today, I do not realize how we made it as people over the last many years when we only had 3 or 4 TV channels, and in many cases, you had to get up and walk over that TV and turn it. Anybody remember that? She's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, and I lived in Cincinnati. We had Channel 2, Channel 5, Channel 12, and UHF Channel 19. Yeah. And if you wanted to kind of see what was on, Dad would say, go up and flip that channel. One of the folks in my Sunday school class this morning said, yeah, or just those rabbit ears. Hold it right there. Stand right there. Yeah. You remember that? How did we ever live without that? Today we've got the modern conveniences of life, don't we? So our income allows us to do some things, but if we really needed to cut back, we can. I never thought I could. Seriously, I was on that path to say, how does anybody ever live without 250 cable channels? How do you live? I don't know. But guess what? When I lost my job, I found it was one of the first things I could cut and do without. Because when times get tough, you can make some choices that you should have made a long time ago. So the point is, when you're looking at your budget, calculating, thinking now, if something was to happen and we cut this out, this out, and this out, what would we really need a monthly basis? I'm using that $1,000 because it's simple math. We need $1,000 each month. Highly unlikely because your house payment's $1,100, all right? But $1,000, okay? $3,000 to $6,000 is what we want to tuck away to have that. Where do we put that emergency fund? This isn't in there, but where do we not put it? In checking. Why not? You're going to use it. Why? Yeah, you'll spend it in no time flat. Get that out of there. We are weak.
So would you recommend a savings account the best place to put your emergency fund?
Yes, ma'am, I would. Now, some people want to keep that at home. They feel more secure with that at home. I personally don't, because it's even closer to me than a checking account, all right? Now, it isn't cash in most cases, but it's closer to me. Somebody else may find out it's there. Things like fires happen, things like that happen. I personally don't want it there, but for some people, they do want to have that there. I think it's a good idea to have some cash at home, by the way. I'm just saying not our emergency fund. But yes, have it in a savings account, but at the same time, here's what I like to tell people. Have that close enough to you that you can get to it, but far enough away from you that you can't get to it, all right? So there's nothing wrong with a savings account, maybe even at another bank, to where you can get that. You're not going to make, your intention with an emergency fund, with your savings there, is not to make money on it, by the way. So we're not looking for the best interest rate. But hey, if that money's going to be sitting there, it's just going to be waiting for an emergency, why not make some money on it while you can? Some of the online money market accounts may be a good spot for your 3 to 6 months while you keep a little bit close to you, but yet far enough away from you to be able to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I know with that, sometimes like they'll say you have a minimum of 1,000 for the one you just mentioned.
The online money markets?
Yes, so then if you were in trouble and that's all you had,
Yeah.
they wouldn't let you, they'll close your account or penalize you for it.
Well, and here's the other, I don't know where you're talking about with your bank, but I will tell you a lot of banks that they don't really work well with their clients. If that's somebody's not going to work with me, I'm going to find a bank that does. Typically a local bank, a credit union, somebody that would work with us. But on those online money market accounts, in most cases, you can start those with $1. And they're, depending on what they are, there's some of them that are unlimited in your transfers and so forth, which is not necessarily a good thing because we're transferring it back and forth to do that. But whatever you can do to get that away from you, to be able to do it, and I can share some other options with you as well in looking at that. But the big thing is get it out of your checking account, okay? Because it will be spent by you in no time flat, okay? Set it aside, protect it. I do not like to use this word the way we use it as Christians, but I use it in this sense. Your emergency fund is sacred. It is for emergencies only, okay? I don't want to use that word the way we talk about the Lord, but that emergency fund in terms of cash setting aside is sacred, protect it, okay? Only for true, bona fide emergencies, okay? We'll talk more about that here in just a minute. Who needs an emergency fund? Can you think of anybody who does not need an emergency fund? No, they're there. The people who say that they don't need one are the people who are going to get hit first when they need it. Everyone needs an emergency fund. When do you need it? Yesterday. Yeah, now, absolutely. Begin, if you don't have that yet, set that money aside. Work as hard and as aggressively and diligently as you can to get that money set aside. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that, right? You may be able to tighten up that budget a lot to free up some cash to be able to take care of most of that emergency fund in a month or two. I would not let that go on, that $1,000 for more than 3 months. Do what you can. Maybe I need to work a second job, third job, whatever the case may be. Get that money in there. Be specific with it. It may be that you need to sell some stuff. Thank the Lord, we got a storage unit. last weekend. I've been putting stuff, I think I told you we're moving. In fact, we close 1 month from today. I'm a little nervous about that. Haven't done it in 25 years. But storage units are hard to find. Not only with what's going on in the housing situation right now, but storage units are huge. You know why? We got more stuff than we know what to do with. Several years ago when I was on TV, I was driving near my office, and there was a storage unit sign that said, I shared this with my Sunday school class this morning, move in with mama, store your stuff with us. And so I took a picture of that, and I went to the TV studio the next day. I said, have this ready when I bring this up. And they did, and they put that up. And I said, well, who in their right mind is going to move back in with mama and store their stuff, all right? Sell your stuff and don't move back in with mama. We got more stuff than we know what to do or can account for today, and it's put in storage units. And I've got clients who are spending a couple, $300 a month on storage units who don't know what's there, but they can't give it up. Sell some stuff. Guess what you can do with that money? Put it in your emergency fund, okay? You can do that. Need to do it right away. What is an emergency fund not? And that's just a small list. We could go on and on and on. An emergency fund should not be used for a vacation. I don't care how hard you've been working. I don't care how much deserving you believe that a vacation is. I don't care what kind of deal or what comes up. Your emergency fund is not for vacation. Your emergency fund is not to eat out. Okay? When my kids were younger and they were home and we were getting started on this stuff and we were truly living like we should have been. Remember we talked last week about having cash in those cash categories in your envelopes and stuff. And we'd run out of money to be able to go out to eat. And we're like, hey, just stop at the ATM. Thinking that money was just popping out of that machine like there's no tomorrow, all right? It's not eating out money. It's not padding. You run your checking account so low and you get a little anxious and you say, oh, let me dip into this emergency fund and pull some back. What you're doing is you're creating a pattern of where you'll do it for anything. And it may be very easy. You may need to dip in and pull $100 out just to cover you to get through this month. And you say, okay, well, I'll pay it back next month, and maybe you did. And then several months down the road, it's not $100, it's $300. Before you know it, it's more than that. And before you know it, now you can't pay it back. And you're just like the cycle you're in with the credit card. Except now you're in debt to yourself, not a credit card company. And guess who's going to have an emergency pretty quick? Right when you need it. An emergency fund is a separate account. Back to that savings account. Separate from our checking account, away from us so we can't get a hold of it. And it is protection. It's insulation. It's protection for when those things may happen and when they do, how we can get through those. And it is for emergencies only. For emergencies only. I had a guy several years ago came in and he said, yeah, we had to dip in our emergency fund this month. And I'm like, well, for what? Well, we got free tickets to the Braves game. Free tickets to the Braves game? Well, how much did that cost you? Oh, they were free. Well, wait a minute. You got free tickets to the Braves game. They were free, and I'm asking how much they cost you. You say nothing, but you had to dip into your emergency fund. Oh, yeah, we hadn't planned on that, and we had parking, and of course, we had to go out to eat on the way over there. We had to get some souvenirs, and we had to do this. Wound up costing them $100 or so. I don't remember exactly what it was. They've just created that pattern. It's going to let them use that emergency fund for what they want to use it for. I also had a client many years ago, and husband and wife, they'd only been married a few months. She is pregnant, getting ready to deliver their first child. And they came in on their next to last appointment with me and said, we bought a puppy. I'm like, a puppy? Where did a puppy come from in this? I don't remember. And they were struggling. I'm like, where did a puppy? You're getting ready to have a baby. What are you doing with a puppy to do? Oh, yeah. So how much does this puppy cost you? $750 for a puppy. All right, a puppy. And I love dogs, but ain't no dog worth $750. And if you've got a $750, I'm sorry, but there's no dog worth $750. Okay. I said, well, how did you pay for this? Oh, we took it out of the emergency fund. Yeah. People make some crazy choices. An emergency fund turns a financial disaster into an inconvenience. When those things happen and you've got that emergency fund, you're impacted, but it's not a disaster that is to most people. Because you're insulated from those. You've prepared for those. monthly accruing. Do you realize that your emergency fund is not to be used for some of those other things that we save for? That we spend for, I should say not save for, but spend for. So as you think about that, flip that one back. That one? Okay, go right ahead. When you think about your emergency fund, what are some of the things that we could be saving for that would not be an emergency? Vacation. Good one. What else? Must be getting vacation time here. What else? What else could we be saving for? Who said Christmas? Yeah. Do you realize my wife's birthday is 6 months from today? Which means that Christmas is 6 months and 19 days from today. How much have you got saved up for it? Ideally, you were saving for, did you get that? Ideally, you were saving for Christmas back in January. If you spend $1,200 a year in Christmas and set aside $100 every month for 12 months, you have your Christmas money come December. Or more than likely, if you're like a lot of people, including my wife, you've pretty much got Christmas done by the time Thanksgiving hits. Because you've been able to buy stuff when it was really on sale, as opposed when they told you it was on sale, mark the prices up, put a price reduction sign on it, okay? But it's being intentional with being able to do it. Great one, Christmas. What else might we be saving for? That's not an emergency. College. Anybody else? House projects. New house, yeah. Vehicle mods. What else? These are good things, things I didn't have. The point is, your emergency fund is not saving for those things, but the savings for those things are needed as well. We need to be accruing on a monthly basis to set aside the money for those things. You said vehicle mods. I would tell you vehicle repairs. I understand the mods, but a car is more likely to break down for most people than they would be modified by people. Average car repair, according to Cars.com magazine, I think it is like $420 for an average car repair. I wish mine back in January would have been average. It was twice average, all right? But cheaper than a car payment, all right? Car replacement, I think, is that what you said, car replacement? Saving for a car replacement. Do you realize when you save cash, do you realize if you could save cash, if you could do this, I'm not telling you you're going to do it, just simple math here. Believe me, I'm looking for simple math in my mind. Simple math, if you were able to save $420 a month, every month for a year, you'd have $5,000. And if you did that for 2 years, you'd have $10,000. And if you did that for 3 years, what would you have? No, new car. And no car payment. And the ability to keep saving and doing that over and over again. I have 3 kids, all adults. One lives in Athens, the 2 are in Forsyth County near me. Between them, I believe they have 9 cars since they graduated, or since they got their driver's license. 9 cars, maybe 10, and have never had a car payment. Why? Because you save up and you prepare for that. It's something that's coming. And by the way, it's not an emergency. My son totaled his car that he had modified significantly. Totaled it back in December, January. Worried my wife to death. He's like, Mom, it's okay. I got the savings to go out and buy another one. And he's in college. Yeah. Saving for these things. Monthly accruing. Not everything is an emergency. We should be saving for an emergency fund, but we also need to do some other saving as well, because savings for other things that are coming about is not something that needs to be taken from our emergency fund at all. You need to be clear in what you are saving for as well. Why do things become emergencies? They're not planned. They're not planned, all right? I actually met with a client this week, been a long-time client for about 7 years now, and 2 years ago, this is June, 2 years ago last month, we were meeting, we typically meet towards the end of the month, and they called me the Monday before we were going to meet, I believe on Thursday or Friday. He did. And he said, hey, I just want to give you a heads up that we went out this weekend and we bought a car. And I'm like, no, wait a minute, whoa. You bought a car? I've been working with them for 3 or 4 years. We hadn't been talking about buying a car. A car was not in your plan anywhere. You haven't been saving for this, why don't you? I'm thinking they've got a car payment. He said, yeah, he said, the air conditioning went out of my car. And he said, so we just bought this one. I'm like, you had a $1,500 repair and you went out and bought a $15,000 car. Oh, no, it was a $1,600 repair to fix it. I'm like, okay, so you had a $1,600 repair and you bought a $15,000 car. He said, well, you'll be happy we paid cash for it. Well, where did you get the cash? He said, we got it from our savings account. And what they had been doing is piling up money in that savings account. What was really going on was, in her particular job, she gets paid commission for the first half of the year. After that second half of the year, it's just a little teeny tiny paycheck. Their lifestyle requires that big amount each month to be able to do that. So since I started working with them, we started piling that up. In the first 6 months of the year, started saving up money. We called it a rainy day fund, so that on the back half, they could take a little bit each month to maintain their lifestyle. They took that money and bought a car. Yeah, pretty serious stuff to do that. And you know why it happened? Because they weren't specific with it. They were putting money away, but they weren't tracking inside that savings account what those dollars were to be for. They had their emergency fund here, and they had all that money being saved up for what was going to be their rainy day fund, but they weren't keeping a record to say, hey, this amount of money is specifically for the rainy day. Not for vacation, not for this, not for that. This is specifically set aside for this. They weren't doing that. And so when it came time to where an air conditioning issue was going to cost them $1,600, well, why would we spend that when we can go buy a $15,000 vehicle because we have the cash? When they came to my office later that week, and I think they called me just so I would calm down a little bit, all right? When they came to my office, I said, well, what are you going to do the rest of this year? We don't have that money. And I was told by the wife, we will just cut to the bone. And I said, I'm perfectly fine with that. But for the last 3 or 4 years that I've been working with you, you told me you haven't been able to cut to the bone. Now you're forced to do that. And literally, every month that they came to my office, from then through the rest of the year, she sat in my office and cried because things weren't working out like they'd expected. Came back to January, February, things were going good, putting away money. And what happened last March? COVID. And they're still trying to recover. The problem is we need to be specific with that. But much like our budget, be specific with that money that we're putting away. Track that to be able to say, these dollars are specifically for this, and this, and this. My emergency fund is this, car savings, vacation, Christmas, all those things, all the way down through there. What are some things that we can be saving for? Truly emergencies, we just talked about that, right? But also car repairs, not even a car replacement, but a car repair, because typically we're going to have those beforehand. Your car may not break down, but what's the one thing you know you're going to have over the next 2 or 3 years? Tires. Tires. It's not an emergency. That is probably the number one thing that I hear from people. I can never save up an emergency fund because something always happens. Well, what always happens? Tires. Well, how's that an emergency? You know you're going to need tires. They don't last forever. Why not set aside $20, $25, $30 a month specifically for tires in our savings account? Track that, build it up to where it gets up to about $800, and then go buy your tires when you have to buy your tires. That's a novel concept, isn't it? But no, we got the piece of plastic. We've got the credit card that we can be able to do that with. Vacation. Vacation. I have a client that I started working with about 2 years ago, and I remember we'd probably been working together for about 6 months when they went on vacation, and they came back and they were just so excited. Do you realize we've been on vacation, we came back, and we had $100 left with us? And I said, you didn't even have to race the Visa card, the Visa bill back home either, did you? Because you were intentional with the money that you saved up, you spent it wisely, anticipating what you were going to do, and brought back cash with you. Anybody ever brought back cash from a vacation? No, because we didn't take it with us. A new car, we just talked about that. Christmas, huge. HOA fees, right? Anything that is not on a non-monthly expenditure. Somebody mentioned doing the July budget, right? Tell you what I do with my budget is I lay it out for 12 months, and then I follow that 1 month that I'm in. The other months are done, but that 1 month that I'm in. But everything else that I see coming down the path, I'm building into that. So when I go to finalize that, it's already there. Amazon, Prime. Some of these things, some of these accruals that I need to be doing, that type of stuff, they're already in my budget, even though my budget's not finalized for now, July through the end of the year. And as I get closer to July, I'll finalize that. July is ready to move. We will finalize it and move forward from that. Saving for these things is critical. What have we been talking about tonight? Saving. Primarily for that emergency fund, okay? That's probably the most important thing that you can do, right? For most of those things, in many cases, we can live without. I mean, the truth is, let's be honest. We don't have any little kids in here. We can live without Christmas gifts, right? We can do that. If times got bad, we can do that. We can live without some of those other things, the vacation stuff that we'd like to accomplish. We can. But the reality is emergencies are going to happen. We have to be prepared for that. Let's save for our emergency fund. Let's get it there. Let's get it as high as we need it to be. Let's also work into our budget and save for those other things. Now, I'm always asked by people, should I not accrue these things? Should I not plan on my monthly savings each month for these things as we go down through here? And I said, as long as you can live without them, no. But there's some things where you need to be saving for. For instance, we just talked about it, tires. They're going to happen. If you drive an automobile, you're going to need tires, okay? Just face it, you're going to need tires. We need to be saving for that. So going back as we talk in 3 weeks about debt, that's one of the things we might curtail what we're doing to make sure that we're saving for these things that we have to save for, okay? Put that money in, just like the spreadsheet that you've got there. Create another one that just simply shows your savings account and just says, here's what we've got with each one of these things that we're saving for. You might even put an amount in there, what your goal is to be able to shoot for, maybe even a target date, and what you're putting in on a monthly basis, and allow that thing to accrue in your spreadsheet on a regular basis. If you're not good with spreadsheets, and some people are not, take a piece of paper. Remember those old yellow pads we used to have? Yeah, take a yellow pad, write it out. Here's what's, show what you're putting in and what you're taking away from. Keep track of what that money is, because those accruals are going to help you stay on target as we go forward in our financial lives on a monthly basis. Make sense? Everybody ready to save? Let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a personal question in front of everybody. How many of you have an emergency fund right now? So I've been preaching to the choir. Good.
I think Paul is like the savings slasher.
And the only reason I call it an emergency fund is to try to build that protection around it. For a lot of people, yes. You know, I tell people you need one, worst case, 2 savings accounts. The more you have, the more you have to manage, all right? And so you can put all of it in one, track it like you should, but for some people, because they know their own person better than anybody else, they want one for their emergency fund and one for everything else that they're saving. Nothing wrong with that. And if you have more than that, there's not a problem, but I only recommend no more than 2 because, again, there's just more work to keeping up with them, okay? The key thing I want to drive home is saving. Saving. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to spend. We live in America, okay? They want us to spend, but we do not have to spend month after month after month after month everything that we make. Let's save up and manage and plan for the future. You know, God's Word tells us to do that as well. Book of Proverbs, a lot of financial advice. I wouldn't even call it advice. A lot of financial direction in the book of Proverbs and a lot of verses in the Bible. It tells us to save up and be prepared. But for most of us, we don't do that. Emergency fund and other things that we're saving for. Any questions on savings? Any questions in general from where we've been at this particular point? Yeah.
Like, if you have, your bank fluctuates, like you're on, like your.
Irregular income?
Yeah, it just fluctuates. Would you, like, break it for the month? Would you break it down? Break it down, like, and then just put in your budget when you get paid, like, does that make sense?
Well, for me to really answer it, I have to look and see what your numbers are, but I think what you're saying is because it's so irregular what we get paid on a regular basis, even our month, even though it's a full month, it's still going to wildly differentiate. There's nothing wrong with doing that on a 2-week basis. You can do that, but you've got to remember that you're pretty much looking at some of those monthly expenses that you have, and you have to address that in those 2 weeks that you're doing it. For instance, our house payment is once a month. And if our house payment is $800, we need to be doing $400 in this piece of the month, $400 here, to be able to make sure we've got our $800 to be able to pay our house payment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just hard because like I work for a school, so like I get paid, like in the summer, it's like a bank, they put it in like a bank.
Mhm.
Like these
So you don't get the same amount every month for the full 12 months? Okay,
So, and then, like say we're out for like a holiday or something, I won't get paid.
okay.
And so it's just all.
So you're not a regular contract person with the school system?
Right.
Okay, I got you.
So it's very,
Yeah, in that particular case. What I would do as much as I can, where I can, is think about those 10 months that I am getting paid when we're in school, try to save as much as I can to offset those summer months where I can. So if you can build up a little rainy day there, so that in the months, I'm assuming it's July and August, maybe June and whatever those are, so you've got a little bit saved up that you can take and pull back into your income to help you in those off months, so to speak, with income. Again, without looking at yours detailed, wouldn't be able to do that. But I would also prioritize my spending of what needs to happen as the money comes in, and if it doesn't, these are the things that I can live without. These are the things that I have to do. Does that help? Okay. Someone else? All right, since your pens are still out and the pencil lead is still hot, I'm gonna give you a homework assignment. On top of the budget that everybody else is working on, all right? We wanna get our budget done tonight, tomorrow, and at the same time, for those of you that have already done your budget, for those of you who are gonna finish your budget tonight, tomorrow, make sure you take a snapshot of where you're at, what you've already spent, so you've got that in your actuals, and monitor those on a weekly basis. Update those amounts in your actuals on a weekly basis. In 3 weeks, we're gonna be talking about that 4-letter word, debt, all right? I'm not gonna ask you to raise your hand about debt, whether you've got debt or not. Statistically, there's a good chunk of you that do, all right? But here's what I want you to add up between now and 3 weeks from now, okay? I want you to add up the number of credit cards that you currently have, okay? Write this down, the number of 3 things I want you to need. I want you to write down and bring with you to class, all right? Now, we're not gonna share this with everybody, all right? I am gonna ask you to give it to me on a piece of paper, and I'm gonna add this up. The number of credit cards that you currently have, okay? The amount of non-secured debt that you have. In other words, it's not your house payment, but credit cards, car payments, things like that. How much do you owe? Of all your credit cards, what would that total amount be? Car loans that you have, what would that total amount be? Add that together, okay? And then third, what is the balance of your mortgage that you still owe? Good. Those 3 numbers, everybody got it? And again, we're not gonna share that publicly. I will share maybe next week, towards the end of class. What's that? Or 3 weeks. I say next week, our next class, all right? I will share the overall number with folks, all right, so that we know what we've got, and then we'll reassess that again towards the end of our class, okay? Number of credit cards, total debt that you have, non-mortgage debt, and then how much is your mortgage balance. Got it? Any questions, concerns, comments? Is this helpful to anybody? Okay? We're gonna really start getting aggressive in 3 weeks. Next class, not next week, okay? I am, you're not supposed to be prideful, and I'm not, but I'm just thankful that I finished up by 7 o'clock. It's the first time in 3 weeks that I've done that. So, yeah. I would, for this exercise, let's just do the personal, okay? Yeah, I mean, clearly with you, you got personal and business, that's your business, but I would just to keep it even with everybody, let's keep it personal, okay? Any other comments, questions? All right. How about dismiss us in a word of prayer?
Heavenly Father, Lord, we do thank you for the opportunity to join together, Lord, each week. Thank you for his willingness to come help us financially if we can get more stable. And Lord, trust in you. A lot of times we don't want to trust in you, Lord, to provide for us financially. We want to trust in, as he mentioned about plastic and stuff like that. Lord, we just pray, God, that we can just take what we learn and apply it to our finances, Lord, not just for us, but for our children. Lord, that they can just succeed more in life and not have that burden of debt over their head throughout their life. Lord, we pray now that you go with us, give us traveling mercy as we travel home tonight, keep us all safe and bring us back safely to your house on Wednesday night and again on Sunday morning. For in Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in 3 weeks.